Hi everyone, it's Rana Husseini. On today's episode, we have Lauren Klare here, who's just going to talk about her life and some struggles she's, went through throughout her basketball career. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you come from.
I'm Lauren Klare. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised. I now live in Erie, Pennsylvania. I go to Mercyhurst University, and I play basketball there. I'm a rising senior, so I'm finishing up my junior year right now. And yeah, I come from a cool family of believers, especially in faith. My family's very Catholic and born and raised, and it's kind of been instilled in me. So that's a big part of who I am and kind of what I do in life.
So tell me a little bit about your experience here at Mercyhurst.
Yeah, so I didn't have a conventional start to my freshman year. At the beginning of September, I got one of the hardest phone calls I've ever gotten in my life from my parents with the news that my mom was diagnosed with salivary gland/duct cancer, so in her neck essentially. And at the time, there was a lot of hope, and it was pretty early into the cancer, and there's just like a lot of hope from my parents towards me to kind of be patient, relax, and just kind of trust the doctors on everything. And I wish my story went a little different, but as the time progressed, over December, she went through radiation. She did proton therapy radiation, which is this new and advanced kind of radiation that there's only, I think, 5 machines in the world that do it. So we were kind of fortunate that one of them was in Cincinnati at the University of Cincinnati Hospital. And she was diagnosed and went through all of radiation. It was still really hopeful. There was a lot of good, positive news that the treatment and everything was working. But I guess how it works is they don't scan her again until months after the radiation is complete. So still I was told by my parents, like, stay hopeful, like, keep the positive mindset, stay at school, keep working hard, and kind of focus on, like, everything in life that brings me joy aside and kind of let them do their job. My mom put all of her time and energy into doing that and fighting. And so there was a huge sense of hope. Obviously, at the same time was COVID. So there were a lot of issues with just hospital-wise, like the ability to go to treatment and stuff with my mom was difficult, which kind of was hard on my dad because he's her right-hand man and he wanted to be at every appointment possible. But she was a fighter and she had no problem driving herself to every treatment, everything, and she was just like a truly incredible human in how she handled it in the class that she had through the fight. And then around Christmas, I went home for our Christmas break because we had a week off of basketball. So I went home. My 2 older sisters also went home. And my mom was doing great. She was in good spirits. She had just finished her radiation, so it was kind of a positive celebration. And then towards the end of December, she started getting a cough, like right at the end of my Christmas break. She got a cough, and the doctors were good to tell her, like, hey, if you, like, experience any other illness, you're immunocompromised right now, like, come see us, get it checked out. And it didn't feel right in her. So she went to her doctor, and they decided to do a chest scan. And at the time, I had just gone back. I was 2 days back at school because basketball was continuing. And so I went back, and then they called me to let me know that they did a chest scan just to essentially the hope was to clear her lungs out of the picture and having no problems in that realm. But the scans came back, and they found out her cancer was all over her chest and in her lungs, which still at that time there was a huge push for hope and a sense that it wasn't too far past the point of no return. So once again, my parents, with our faith and everything else, instilled in me to have hope, trust the process, and kind of just believe that what's going to happen is going to be right. But they encouraged me to continue, stay, and play basketball because even though it was really hard on me, it was one of the best things for my mom to, like, watch and celebrate that I was living life and she wasn't distracting me from my goals and setting me back with school or anything. So it was incredible that she gave me the gift of normalcy and kept me here, and while she was fighting and obviously going through a lot of stuff, not on her own, obviously with my dad and my sisters, but Yeah, so, and then I made my dad promise me that he would be 100% honest when it was time for me to come home, because I felt like I needed that time at home and that closure, even if it was hard for her to see me stop playing and kind of know that she's the reason my life is like kind of a little distraught at the moment. I felt I needed that closure. So I had hard conversations with my dad, but I told him that he needed to be just like upright and honest on the truth of everything, because I was 5.5 hours away from home. And so I was kind of left out of the loop on a lot of the little details of everything, just essentially in a selfless way to keep me going and keep me focused while I'm here. And so we had an away game at Damon. It was January like 5th or 6th, so I was back for a week. And we had an away trip, which is a few hours away. And I later learned that on the way to the game, my dad had called our head coach and let her know that it was time for me to come home, and the cancer had spread pretty much everywhere. And it was almost a sense of urgency to kind of get me home, because there was really no question on kind of the amount of days she had left or anything. So my coach knew this going into the game, and they made the decision together to not tell me because it was too late. I was already there, so there was nothing they could do about getting me back at the time. And so I played my last game. She watched it from the hospital, and it was kind of cool. I made my last layup of the game. It was a cool little moment that I later learned had meaning. But yeah, so she watched that game, and I got back to school, and my aunt and uncle were at school with their cars kind of ready to take me home, and kind of quickly told me to pack up and move on. So my dad called me on the bus ride home, which was a little tough because I tend to be a person that tries to feel my emotions on my own sometimes, so it was hard being surrounded by people who I knew loved me and supported me in every way. So he called me on the bus, and somehow I kept it together a little bit. But then I got to the locker room, and I had to talk with my team, like, guys, like, I'm sorry, but, and I was, even just like how I am emotionally, like a lot of them, basketball-wise, I didn't tell all the details of my mom's stuff or the severity of it, because I know I needed that sense of normalcy, and basketball was my outlet. And I knew, like, for my sanity, I wanted to separate the emotions of, like, my life, but also, like, have basketball to be this, like, outlet and release. So I obviously talked to some of them about it, but the whole team didn't know kind of my story or where my mom was at, because I didn't feel like it would help me if I told everyone the details, because I wanted just a community of people around me who were just being friends with me. And I was also a freshman, so it was a weird little situation, and timing aspect of it was a little foreign. But yeah, so I got back, and we had a moment in the locker room, and my teammates had actually never seen me cry, and I stood in front of them, and I told them I was just very emotional that I was headed home, and that it was kind of my last chance to, like, hang out and be with my mom. And it was this cool moment, because everyone just, like, got up and was crying and just hugged me, and the support was just so real and genuine. So that was hard, but I look back on it, and I appreciate that moment a lot. So then I went home. I went back to Cincinnati that day. My aunt and uncle took me back, and I get there, and my mom's home and pretty sick, and my sisters are there, and so is my dad. And my dad takes me into the office at our house, and he has this talk with me that her cancer was in her bones, blood, everything, and he said he was waiting to tell me in person, to tell me the severity of it almost, and how it was a matter of days, even hours. They just had no idea, and they decided to take my mom out of the hospital, so her wish to be at home and be in a place of peace surrounded by the people she loves. And so I was there. I was obviously in shock, because I was left out of the loop on a lot, out of love for sure, but it was just like a lot of moving parts. I hadn't seen my mom, and I hadn't seen the severity of it since Christmas. And so, yeah, so I find out that, and then school thankfully hadn't started up yet, just basketball had, so I had a few weeks of no school, so I was just home, present, kind of helping my mom out here and there, and my major's biology, so I kind of love the medicine aspect of just a lot of the illnesses and stuff that were, like, go on around, and so I kind of was that for my mom, and that was my role for the family, was to be more of the medical aid and like help. And I was on night duty every night and would help take her meds every 3 hours and stuff like that, which is a cool gift that I was able to give back to her. And so when I got home, they told me it was a matter of days, and I was truly blessed because my mom had the ability to fight for another month. And so I got a whole month of my mom being home. She got to have a lot of closure with all the people she loves. We had the hard conversations, even though they were like very difficult. She left nothing unsaid, which was a true blessing, and the gift of time that I got to have that last month with her was incredible. So yeah, on the night of February 7th, we checked her into hospice. And on February 8th, my dad spent the night at hospice because it was also weird with COVID. She could only have so many visitors. And February 8th, the morning at like 8:15, my dad came home to tell us that she had passed. And she actually, she gave us a beautiful story. My dad had spent the whole night and everything there, and we didn't live too far from hospice. So his mom, my grandma, was gonna come and like just watch her for an hour while my dad ran home to shower. And it was a beautiful thing. So he was about to leave around like 8:20, 8:15, and at 8:15 she passed away while he was still there, like right before. My grandma was on the way to come kind of tap him out for a minute so he could go shower and get freshened up. But yeah, so I witnessed the beauty within the fight of my mom, and just, yeah, so many incredible things. I know at the time it was a lot of like pain, suffering, and kind of this like poor me attitude, which I think is natural because we're human, but my mom never for a second had that, and she wouldn't let us have that because she was the one going through the suffering and the pain and the physical agony of it all, and she just showed through her actions that everything's okay and that there's a peace about kind of accepting and just having love and having closure in life. And so yeah, so that was kind of my unconventional freshman year. But at the time, I didn't know all the life lessons I would get from this moment. But the biggest thing I kind of got out of it was my faith. And like I said, I'm a Catholic, and I was always Catholic, and I raised Catholic school, everything. But I got to witness the faith work through my mom and through my family and through my loved ones. And I have this new appreciation and love and, I don't know, fire in my faith now because I witnessed not only her ability to fight and live with this no fear mindset and like this joy for what's to come, even through the hard times, even through the idea of leaving us and all this. Like, she never once questioned that like we were in good hands and that we were gonna be okay because she knew she gave us that faith. And I had this moment of like, I don't know, a lot of people define, and I like the definition of faith, is believing without seeing. And I was always taught that it is believing without seeing, but I feel really fortunate because I was given the gift to see. And my exact moment where I can pinpoint my like clarity on faith and God and my beliefs was the moment my dad came home from hospice to tell us that she had passed. And he told me and my two sisters. And you'd normally think like you'd break down, cry, and my dad told us, and I like felt this excitement and this like joy for her and like where she was headed and what's to come. And it was just a moment of like peace amongst the chaos that I can't define other than through my faith. And yeah, so yeah, that's my kind of my long-winded story about how my freshman year went. I grew a lot of relationships and love, and there's been so much good from it. And I obviously continue to come back to Mercyhurst, and the support system there is unreal, especially freshman year. Like I didn't even know these people, and I had to get like really emotionally connected in order to be able to talk to someone and have them understand a little bit what was going on in my life. But yeah, that was...
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's backtrack a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Going back to when you said your emotions and your feelings, like you don't really like to talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the time where you knew your mom was battling with this, and you told your dad, I'm expecting you to call me whenever this happens. So how was it like just kind of being torn between the two, or even like when your dad would just call you if you were like, oh my God, like is this the call like that I've been waiting like not waiting for, but like is this the call, like is this it? So like talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was really hard-headed freshman year, and I was adamant that people around me, I didn't want them to be friends with me because I was forming new relationships. I didn't want them to be friends out of this like pity or like hurt for me, because I knew they were genuine people who would care for me. So I was pretty like closed off and protected just because of my timing of it all, and I wanted people to like choose to be friends with me because it was me, not because they felt for me and where I was in life and everything. But yeah, every phone call, I just like, my heart sank every phone call, which was kind of frustrating because they were frequent. But yeah, it was just lots of just waiting almost for bad stuff to happen, which is like a terrible mindset to have in life. But it was like this kind of waiting for the inevitable to happen, which is hard. But I don't know. I had, obviously I had my faith, so that was the constant in my life that didn't let me get too high or too low. I obviously had hope, but I also had the ability to step back and be like, thy will be done, and wherever this takes us, wherever this takes our family, like we're okay. Like and I had this huge confidence. There were obviously breakdowns and moments where I was like, I can't function without my best friend in life, and I definitely worked it up in my mind, but I now look back on it and I realize that like she set me up so well to be able to live and go on, and like she gave me all of her energy for those 19 years that we had together, and like the gift of those 19 years was later put into like perspective for me, because I don't know, I just realized that she made the most of those 19 years, and I was to an age where I like have those memories and everything, and obviously there's a lot of life experience that I'd love for her to be here with, but the foundation I like have reflected on that she built in me is I miss her presence, but I don't feel her absence, you know? Like I feel her with me all the time, and even just like jokes, humor, like it's cool to have like those moments of her and me and in my sisters and in my dad. Like there's been so much that I've noticed has been successful because of her, and I would have never noticed that unless obviously life took it and went the way it was.
So everything just seems like it's so positive, and it's only natural for there to be like bad days, and you know I'm very faithful as well, and there are days where like I am angry with like my God, and I'm angry with faith, and like, so do you have like a specific time where you feel like you remember where you were just like that was, you would say, your lowest point, like, and like if you feel comfortable enough to kind of share that?
So I had a moment, it was right after the diagnosis, where I was just in my car. I called my best friend. She lives in Cincinnati. And I called her, and I just, like, absolutely broke down. And I was like, I actually can't imagine a world without her in it. And and of course my mind was going to weddings, like having kids one day, and, like, these extremes that I was just like, it's not going to happen without her. And, like, even the phone calls and the idea of, like, changing my life and how I just function every day and not being able to talk to her was, like, unfathomable. But it was, I started going to Mass daily, which was a huge thing for me because it helped me to put my feelings into perspective. And I'm really fortunate enough to say, and I know people through like a lot of hardships and hard times in life like want to point the finger and find blame. And I can't explain it, but there was never a point where I was like angry at God or like what I was doing. Like I was angry at myself sometimes because I felt angry that I couldn't help her physically, and like I know my dad felt the same way, that it was like a helpless feeling that like we couldn't physically do something. But there was never a moment where I was like angry at God or like even the hand I was dealt. Like I was frustrated sometimes, but I never had this like anger in me, which was a really cool gift. And obviously like Mass, I got emotional more in Mass, and that was my time to like let out my emotions. I would just sit there and think alone with my own thoughts, which was hard because I took it to extremes, and I thought of all the big moments in life where I'd miss her, not necessarily like the little daily stuff. But I can't say there was like one low other than right after I found out. I was just like, I don't know, I didn't even allow myself time to process before I just, like, kind of went crazy and just for a day I had this, like, poor me attitude, and when in reality it was still, like, a time of hope. So I had everyone telling me to be hopeful and everything, and I can't say I knew it was going to end the way it was, but I knew I couldn't let myself get too hopeful because I knew reality would be much harder if I did.
You're a special person. Yeah, you're like saying it so like positively. I don't know if I could do that in your situation. But you also described you got the extra month with your mom.
Yeah.
Was there something like, when you guys had conversations, that something that she, like, anything that she said that you feel like you just think about, whether it was just a conversation, like, words that really, like, just, like, hit your soul every time you, like, think about it?
Well, I kind of came up, I couldn't have a lot of, we had deep talks, but she was so good about having these, like, deep, serious conversations, and, like, she just had this peace about her. She wasn't emotional. So it's hard for me to have this talk because I knew, like, I would get emotional. So it was a hard, like, trade-off for me because I wanted to have these talks, but I also didn't want her to see how bad I was, like, hurting because of her. And I don't know if so the only questions I could really get out were, like, kind of joke questions, like, all right, favorite song, like, and the one thing it was funny when it was a serious conversation when I was, like, asking these, like, kind of surface level questions just for my own knowledge and, like, little things to think about her with. And she cracked a joke and she was like, yes, like, my one advice, because I was like, okay, weddings, like, how do you want my hair, like, all this. And she cracked a joke and she was like, the one thing you have to promise me is, like, make sure the bridesmaids pay for their own dresses. And I'm like, okay, like, that's like, why are we? And so she had the ability through, like, the hard conversations to, like, give me these memorable moments of joy, I'd say, more than anything. Like, even through, like, her illness and, like, just how fragile she got. Like, sometimes she would, like, trip or fall or, like, something, and, like, she made it this, like, I don't know, she had the ability to turn this suffering into joyful memories, which was the biggest gift for me because the hardest part for me was seeing her sick. And I knew that, like, I still have the hard time, like, picturing her sick, and, like, it just hurts me to, like, even have that thought of my life-filled mom like that. And I don't know, it was just cool that she knew I was struggling with that aspect of it, and when I do think of her sick, I think of the funny moments of her sick, which was, like, another just blessing she left me with, another gift that I wish I could thank her for, but yeah, so.
So since your mom has passed, have you ever felt the need to call her, or have you called her before?
She's actually still, my mom's number is still in my favorites. My dad has her phone, so I guess someone would answer if I called it. But I have voicemails of her still, which that's why I won't upgrade my phone because I don't know how to save them really. But I texted her, but I also knew my dad had her phone, so I knew like, it wasn't necessarily, like, my way to communicate with her because my dad would see all of her texts, and but yeah, so I don't know, I talk to her a lot, like, I do in my mind more than I do, like, in writing. The first 2 months after, I journaled a lot, which, if you know me, like, that's not really my thing, like, it was a little outside of my comfort zone. But I love nature, so I would go by Lake Erie and just, there's a park over there, and I would just sit and write and journal. And my intent was to write just, like, my thoughts and everything on paper, but it turns out my journal became, like, Dear Mom letters. And for the longest time, I did updates on every little thing, because, like, at the time, I was still making new friends. I was still a freshman, and it was just killing me that she, like, was missing and, like, didn't know these little details of my life. So I started writing them down, which was really helpful because it also forced me to have time to think about her and, like, be emotional, which was a nice little release for me. But yeah, so I'd say I did more writing than, like, texting to her or anything, but yeah.
And so for, like, everything that you've been through, your future and, like, your career and what you want to do with your life, has that kind of altered it a little bit, or, like, how has that shaped what you want to do in your life?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to go into medicine, and I guess my ability to handle my whole life situation with her and everything confirmed that for me. And it was a cool gift that she kind of got to see me practice a little bit. Obviously, nothing too intense. But there was this like confidence in my ability to care for her and like turn off the emotion and like focus on like problem solving in that moment that like confirmed for me that like this was my calling. But just like as a human, I have this new like gift of understanding, and I can't explain it, but like I now am the friend that like people call for like any type of loss, any like hardship or whatever, because they know I have this like understanding on loss. And it's a beautiful thing because it's been a gift I've been able to like give people, which has been really incredible. And just like I've become a better listener, and I don't have to say like I don't have to tell them I can relate because they know I can, which has been cool. And it's been this cool like gift that I can give my friends, my family, and people, that I have this new outlook on the world, which has been, I don't know, pretty cool that I can share that. And another gift I was left with, and now later realized how beautiful it is and how it has made my life so much better and my relationship so much stronger.
And so I ask this question at the end of every interview. If your mom was in this room right now, what's one thing or a few things that you would have to tell her?
Yeah. I'd thank her for just like everything, the person she was, the gifts she gave me, and just the position she left me in. And she honestly set us up for such great success. And I would just thank her because I now realize how she lived her life as an example for how she wants us to live. And I have the perfect role model in my mind, and that's a gift a lot of people don't have and are always seeking. And I have that, and I witnessed that, and I witnessed the good that can come from like just being kind to other people and like serving, and especially having the faith, which is a huge thing she left us with. But yeah, I would just thank her, obviously let her know I miss her, and but I just tell her we're okay. And I know her biggest fear leaving us was like how we're going to be, not how she's going to be. And I think that's what scared her the most. And we are okay. My dad's incredible. He stepped up in so many ways, not only like as a father, which he always was a great father, but he's just been a true like foundational parent that we've needed. I think it's aged us a little bit. I think my sisters and I had to kind of grow up and realize the realities of life sooner than we'd hoped to, but I think it's also a gift because we have this new outlook on the world and perspective and a better ability to love and care for people that she doesn't know it, but she gave us because of the whole situation.